If you want to learn how to create realistic art using alcohol markers, then join me as I show you how I drew this realistic owl from scratch using Copic markers. I'm using a reference image from Pexels. And here are the Copic colors that I'll be using. I'll be drawing in this little sketchbook by Copic. Let's begin! I start off by sketching my owl using a really light marker, E40, to match the overall colors of the reference image. For this artwork, I wanted to challenge myself by sketching directly onto the paper using alcohol markers, instead of sketching with a pencil first. With the basic outline established, I start creating the underpainting. I look for areas of shadow in my reference image and color them in using these pale, muted blue colors. You might be wondering why on earth I'm using blue, when this owl's feathers are clearly white and various shades of brown. There's no blue in this entire reference image. Well, this blue is the underpainting layer, which helps establish the values. Alcohol markers are transparent, so later, I'll be layering over these blue layers with other colors that look more like the owl's actual colors. I'll talk more about this process later. Next, I focus on drawing the details on the owl's face. This is tricky, trying to draw these details without having a clean, polished pencil sketch underneath. But one reason I wanted to draw directly with alcohol markers is to see if I could A, speed up my process, and B, overcome my fear of making mistakes. When you draw with a pencil, you can erase whenever you make a mistake or want to adjust your proportions. But when you sketch with ink, it's more permanent, so it forces you to look more carefully and try to make your lines more accurate right from the start. Here you see me using a ruler to check that the bottom parts of the owl's eyes line up horizontally. This is something that would have been done in the pencil sketching phase, but since I'm using a dark brown marker, I want to make sure to get the alignment just right, because dark markers are hard to erase or cover up if you make a mistake. I'm also taking some creative liberties with the owl's eyes. I made them a bit bigger on purpose to make the owl even cuter. I also made the catch lights in the eyes a bit brighter than they are in the reference photo. Next, I work on the area around the owl's eyes and the feathers framing its face. At this stage, I'm just blocking in some basic colors to create the overall form of the owl so that it starts looking more like a 3D owl and less like a blank piece of paper. I'll be going over all of these colors many more times to create shadows, highlights, and texture. Now I'm using E23 to draw this outline that frames the central part of the owl's face. I'm basically just getting down some details to help establish the various parts of the owl's body. And then I use some lighter browns to block in the top and sides. Now it's time to start on the owl's chest, so I once again use B63 to draw in some feather textures. I'm using the reference photo as a guide, but I'm not trying to copy it precisely, feather for feather, because that would be way too tedious. Instead, I'm trying to create the general impression of these overlapping feathers. Next, I use B60 and color over the blue areas to soften out those hard edges. B60 is very pale, so it helps blend the darker blue into the white of the paper, creating a more seamless transition that looks more natural. If you've ever wondered why there are so many really light, pale Copic colors that you can barely even see on your paper, it's because those colors can help you create more smooth, natural blends when you're blending from a color to a bright highlight. Now you can really see how the blue underpainting changes when a different color is added on top. I'm using a variety of earth colors, like E53, E40, and E21 on top of the underpainting to start making the colors of the owl's chest look more realistic. The blues underneath still show through, but now they look more like a bluish gray. Next, I focus on the owl's wings to help lay down the rest of the colors for the owl's body. I draw short, quick little lines to match the texture and appearance of these feathers in the reference image, layering a darker brown over the lighter brown, and then using E40 on top to help soften the hard edges and blend the colors together a little bit. Then I do the same for the other wing. Now back to the owl's face. I focus on the eyes and then work my way outwards using a dark brown marker. Using dark markers can be really scary because you can't erase them, so I'm trying to be really careful. When it comes to making art, the fear of messing up is very real, even for professional artists, so you're definitely not alone. It's just part of the creative process, and the important thing is to just plow through that fear and make the art that you want to make. Also, when you're feeling that fear, it means you're challenging yourself, and that's undeniably a good thing. Because when you challenge yourself, it helps you grow as an artist. You learn a lot, and it expands your creative repertoire. And that knowledge you'll take with you into every piece of art that you create. So don't be afraid of that fear of messing up. Learn to embrace it. When you accept that feeling of discomfort, you might notice it actually feels kind of exhilarating. It's like you're living on the edge, exploring new artistic horizons, instead of just lingering comfortably in familiar territory. It takes real guts to venture out of your comfort zone, so congratulate yourself every time you do so. Now back to this owl. You can see that I'm continuing to add darker colors on top of my bottom layers to create more depth, contrast, and shading. I'm approaching this realistic owl drawing as a building and layering process, as the colors I apply on top subtly alter the colors underneath, creating a rich complexity that helps make this owl look realistic. Whenever I add dark colors, it leaves a strong, harsh edge. So to soften it up, I go back in with a lighter color to smooth it out. Next, I use V95 to darken up the shadows on the owl's chest. V95 is a nice neutral color, so it works well for this purpose. Early on in this artwork, I decided I didn't want to use any grays or blacks. Copic offers 2 different blacks and 46 different grays. So if I had wanted to use grays, there would have been plenty of tones to choose from. But for this artwork, I worried that grays or black would be a bit too deadening and boring. So instead, I used a variety of neutral, muted colors in place of grays. Now I'm going over top of the previous layers with E57 and smoothing out the harsh edges with V93. I carry on for the rest of the owl's chest, adding different browns and then smoothing it out with my muted violets. My goal is to continue creating a feather texture while building up the colors to look more realistic. This Copic sketchbook paper is really exceptional when it comes to layering and blending colors like this. For many years, I used alcohol markers on cardstock, which is a lot cheaper than alcohol marker paper, and I was actually quite content using cardstock. But once I started using alcohol marker paper, I quickly realized what a huge difference it makes to use paper that is specifically designed for use with alcohol markers. For one thing, alcohol marker paper makes it so much easier to blend the colors, even if the bottom layer is dry. I really love the quality of this Copic sketchbook paper. It's definitely one of my favorites. The colors blend so smoothly and easily. I can apply layer after layer of alcohol markers, and the paper accepts it perfectly without pilling or getting oversaturated. Copic paper is really expensive compared to the many alternatives out there, but in my opinion, it is really a beautiful paper to work on, especially if you want to create realism or work in any kind of style that requires smooth blends and lots of layers. When I was first learning how to use alcohol markers over 10 years ago, I couldn't find any videos like this about how to draw realistic art with alcohol markers, so I had to learn everything by trial and error. I'm so happy for this opportunity to share with you these alcohol marker techniques that I've discovered over the years. If you're enjoying this video and finding it helpful, please tap the like button. That lets me know that you enjoy this kind of content. Subscribe to my channel to see more of my art videos, and comment below if you have any suggestions for topics or techniques that you'd like me to cover in future videos. Now it's time to start darkening up certain areas, so I focus on the bottom of the owl's head and then work my way around the sides and along the edges of the owl. I want to introduce some subtle yellow colors into this drawing to help liven it up, so I use Y32 here and there to add some pops of color. Then I add YR23, which is more of an orangey yellow. I don't want to overdo it though, because these yellow colors are rather strong in comparison to the subtle colors I've already laid down, so I don't want these yellow colors to overpower the rest of the artwork. The idea is to add some slightly stronger colors that blend in seamlessly with the rest of the owl. At this stage in the artwork, I look it over and continue to refine the different areas as needed. Mostly, it's a matter of darkening up various places and adding more details. I'm constantly looking at my reference image and assessing what needs to be done to make this owl look realistic. I build up my dark areas slowly and carefully, such as this area on top of the owl's forehead, because I don't want to go too dark too soon. Then I add more dark colors to the owl's eyes and the feathers around the owl's eyes. I darken the eyelids and add a more saturated brown to the darker areas of the face. There are a lot of neutral tones in the owl's face that could be colored in with grays, but since I've decided not to use grays in this artwork, instead I use E40 and E42, which are neutral but contain a hint of brown. As I continue coloring in the owl's face, my goal is to create some feathery textures that are very subtle. The owl's face is mostly white, so if I make the shadows look too dark, it could weigh the whole face down. So the trick is to create subtle shadows that are actually very, very light. To help maintain the sense of lightness, I often use the colorless blender to blend my lightest colors into the white of the paper. There's a bit more color on the feathers above the owl's beak, so I add some light browns there. Then I work more on softening the feathers at the top of the owl's head and deepen the colors along the crease. As you can see, drawing realism with alcohol markers is really a layering and building process, with multiple layers of colors overlapping, slightly changing the hues underneath. This process is also known as glazing, an artistic technique that's used in a lot of different media, from oil painting to watercolors to colored pencils. When you glaze transparent colors on top of previous layers, it creates a visual richness and complexity that is perfect for depicting realism. If you'd like to learn more of my favorite alcohol marker techniques, check out my ultimate guide to using alcohol markers, where you can watch over 11 hours of instructional video that's designed to take you step by step from a beginner level to an advanced level. I'll post a link below this video. Now it's time to use my darker brown marker to bring out more of the dark areas on this owl. I tighten up the colors on the owl's wings and try to make the marks look organic. A few more touches here and there, and now the alcohol marker portion of this drawing is done. I could stop here if I wanted, but I'm going to use a white colored pencil to bring back some highlights. There is no white alcohol marker, so if you want to add white on top of an alcohol marker drawing, then you need to use a different media like colored pencil, paint pen, gel pen, acrylic, or gouache. As you can see, the white colored pencil is transparent on top of the alcohol marker layers, so the colors underneath do show through. This is great for adding subtle highlights and for adding lighter tints to the feather texture. The white colored pencil shows up better when layered over the darker marker colors. If I ever make a mistake with my colored pencil, I just use my eraser to gently remove the unwanted colored pencil marks, and it doesn't affect the alcohol marker layers underneath. Next, I use one more colored pencil, a dark umber Prismacolor, to draw in these tiny dark spots at the top of the owl's head. Because colored pencils can be sharpened to a fine point, it's often easier to use colored pencils to create tiny details like this. And now I add small dark spots on the owl's neck and chest. I'm not copying the reference photo precisely. I'm just using it as a guide for where to place these spots, trying to make it look as organic as possible. I also subtly vary the size and shapes of these spots, so that they look more like they're part of the owl's feathers, rather than little dots added on top. I want them to blend in and look seamless and natural. My final step is to use a white Posca paint pen to add little details at the top of the owl's head. This paint pen is much more opaque than the white colored pencil, so I try to use it very sparingly so that it's not too distracting. If I ever feel like the white looks too opaque, I gently use my finger to carefully wipe away some of the paint, which helps it blend in more with the background colors. So there you go! I hope you found it really useful to watch my process as I used alcohol markers to draw this realistic owl. If you want to see another example of how to create realistic art with alcohol markers, check out this video, where I demonstrate the steps to coloring in these realistic cherries. See you there!